Meanwhile, one of our guests who are supposed to be here, Daggubatu Suresh, who is a filmmaker and also the president for VNR Vignana Jyothi Educational Society, representing. There is a very wonderful initiative they have started where they have acres of land and they call upon the youngsters who are basically a failed or a 10 passed out or before that. They are given training and are given certain acres of land to do the farming techniques are taught, and also the marketing of agriculture are taught. To talk about that, we were supposed to have Dr. Suresh Daggubati, but he is unwell. However, there is a representation to talk about that wonderful initiative. Join me in welcoming Dr. Kiran Chakravarthula from VNR Vignana Jyothi Institute of Educational Technology. A round of applause for Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Sudhir Gautam, and thanks IndiGlobal for this opportunity. I'm glad to be representing Vignana Jyothi here on behalf of the President, Mr. Suresh Babu Daggubati, who could not be here today. So, because Mr. Sudhir Gautam introduced the Agricultural Institute that we have, which is Dr. D. Ramanaidu Vignana Jyothi Institute of Rural Development, which is in Tuniki village. So I would first talk about that. But since my background is from engineering and I do other things, I'm also the Global Relationships Officer at Vignana Jyothi, VNR IIT, and I head the incubator there. So I would also talk about the role of educational institutions as based on the theme that is given today. So at the outset, Dr. D. Ramanaidu Vignana Jyothi Institute of Rural Development does a holistic, takes a holistic approach towards agriculture training. While governments actually can provide for resources that can actually take agriculture and the whole ecosystem of agriculture forward, they can do very little towards agricultural training, and that is where private sector and institutions like Dr. D. Ramanaidu Vignana Jyothi would come into picture, where they train people from the rural areas to actually take agriculture forward. So at that institute, like Mr. Sudhir was mentioning, students actually get practical hands-on training with agriculture, where they go into the farms and work on farms and agriculture and learn how to improve an end-to-end crop production techniques about crop management, cultural practices, soil and water management, seed production, processing, packaging, marketing, agricultural produce, or in all ways improving agricultural productivity and production. They also learn about the aligned fields like horticulture, animal husbandry, and poultry in that institute, which was also, which also recognized international recognitions in the past. And now moving on to the theme that the other speakers have also spoken about the national education policy and the role of educational institutions. I believe the National Education Policy 2020 is, of course, a very great welcome move and is a revolutionary move in itself. Also because we had our first education policy in 1968 and then again in 1986. And the 12th five-year plan, which was supposed to be covering between 2012 and 2017, was also successful in the sense that it actually helped us establish several Indian Institutes of Technology, Indian Institute of Space Engineering Research, and more institutions in IIMs and all that included. So most of us here, I believe, belong to a generation where we thought IITs are those 7 premier institutions that everyone wants to go to. But now that number has gone manifold up. And that is also a result of that 12th five-year plan. But again, while the 12th five-year plan in itself was aspiring and was definitely ambitious, we should also acknowledge the fact that the journey until there was not really a bad one. Now that we revolutionized or took up a new policy does not mean the old ones were actually something that needed replacement. Of course, all the global CXOs that we have today in various companies were, of course, the fruits of that education and the opportunities that education gave them from India. But it is also time for us to understand that the framework of education, what we call the education system itself, even linguistically, gives us that framework, the idea of framework, which national education policy tries to break apart, tries to abolish the rigidness of it, and tries to provide what opportunities there can be for people. I'm sure most of you here are definitely aware of what the educational policy, the national education policy tells about the 10+2 structure being replaced by the 5+3+3+4 structure, the multiple entry and multiple exit systems, and how students can get a diploma after the first year, a certificate course after the first year, an advanced diploma after the second, and the third year gives a degree, and with research, they can also get a research degree in the fourth year of undergraduate, which was until now a 3-year program, and then they can complete a master's within 1 more year. But it's not just about just changing the structure, right? It's also about changing the teacher's mindset, the infrastructure, the organizational context, and the cultural context of education, and what it does to our teachers and our students. Thanks to for example, in the engineering context, the Washington Accord, which was where India joined as a signatory, and which was in effect from 2013 June, the version 3.0 of Washington Accord, which is about the 4-year undergrad engineering program, talks about the 12 graduate attributes. Obviously, that came off after the 12th 5-year plan. So it's good that India caught up with that. And there we are talking about an overall development, the role of engineers in the society, the ethics, the communication, how the project management happens in engineering, on all these aspects of education, which were not really in the fore earlier. And the multiple exit and multiple entry system and the academic bank credits, or the ABC, give students the opportunity, putting education literally in the learner-centric environment, or creating everything around the student or learner. That is where I believe that design thinking is embraced in the education system, where we started thinking about the users, the end users being the prime stakeholders, the learners or the students, and try to build a system around it. And that is where I believe there is a lot of opportunity for innovation also in the education system. So I believe also that there is a system design, system thinking approach that is needed at that particular point towards the education system itself, where we design and redesign our systems and our policies in such a way that they suit the ideas of multiple entry and multiple exit. A lot of us, including myself, of course, struggle to understand how that would work in the whole framework that we already have in minds. That discipline that is there, when we understand that the student may not come after the first year. Some of us here are definitely, I understand, teachers and education managers. We may not really be liking the very idea that the student may drop out after 2 years. But again, let's take the example of entrepreneurship, which also I teach, and like I said, I also head the incubation center. Entrepreneurship by design, in its fundamental definition, requires failing multiple times, and embracing failing and learning each time. That famous quote that we talk about, that failure is a stepping stone of success, is very true in the context of entrepreneurship. And then, education system, just now if you juxtapose these two, the idea of entrepreneurship and the idea of education system, we see there is a stark difference in that the education system is designed to ensure that the failure is not appreciated or celebrated. And there is this entrepreneurship that requires people to fail, learn, and move on with that learning. Make new mistakes each day so that you learn from the previous mistakes of yourself and the past, others in the past, and take it forward. And that is not really a part of the education system today. So if we want our students to become startup founders, to become entrepreneurs, to become innovators and researchers in emerging fields of technology where there is interdisciplinarity by design, then we have to definitely rethink how we approach education itself. Incidentally, I believe it is not out of place for me to mention my academic background. I'm a bachelor's of technology. I completed my bachelor's of technology in electronics and instrumentation engineering, and have done 3 masters in biomedical engineering, microsystems engineering, and applied physics. And my PhD was in engineering physics. And my PhD diploma was in innovation and design thinking. What I tell in my classes, I teach professional ethics and human values, entrepreneurship, design thinking, and innovation. What I tell in my classes is, it took me 5 degrees in engineering to realize there are other things to teach. And that was probably necessary for me because I had to complete those degrees that I started. If national education policy, I mean, I studied in the US, but if something like this existed around the world, I probably would have just picked the courses that really appealed to me, and I would have completed my education sooner than spending 16 years in the college as a student. Of course, with due respects to the whole system, that really matured me better. I totally agree to that. And the examples that I give in ethics class or humanities and sciences classes to engineering students are very relevant because of all this exposure. But my point is also that it was probably not really that necessary. And that openness, embracing that openness as teachers, education leaders and managers is what I believe we should be doing if we are looking at education for tomorrow. The famous criticism about education, I may be paraphrasing and I don't remember who quoted, I'm sorry, but they said, we are using textbooks that were written in 1950s, syllabus that was framed in 1960s, and teachers that were trained in 1970s, and we are trying to teach kids that are in the millennium, in the millennials and Gen Z. And about Gen Z particularly, what I observe as a teacher is the current students, I mean the current Gen Z, what we call, or the millennials, they do not like what they are doing, but again, if you give them entire freedom, they don't even know what they want to do. And that is because of the brought up. That is because of the system that trained them to be that way. They can be free to choose, but they don't know what to choose. And that is where leaders like us, like the respected dignitaries on the dais, the networks like IndiGlobal come into picture, where we try to design our system to suit such people, to provide to them what they may want, to provide them multiple options for an engineer to become a musician, like someone was mentioning, or for a doctor to also practice engineering aspects of it. I mean, I was a biomedical engineer. There would definitely be doctors who would do that. My university in the US, Louisiana Tech University, my alma mater, provided, for example, an opportunity for engineers to complete an MD PhD degree in biomedical engineering. Such opportunity is what is necessary also here to be able to break the systems and let students choose what they want to be choosing. And in that context, I would be very brief about what we do at our institution. So, VNR Vignana Jyothi has several best practices, what we call differentiators, that were inspired by Vignana Jyothi as a system itself. A brief introduction about Vignana Jyothi is that Vignana Jyothi runs all education institutions, right from primary education with public school and all the way to doctoral education, engineering doctoral education, where VNR VJIET also offers PhD programs. Incidentally, VNR VJIT is also the only private engineering college in Telangana state to offer AICTE's National Doctor Fellowship Scheme for PhD scholars. And with that kind of background, where we have institutions that teach, of course, agricultural training, like I said, the Institute of Rural Development, we have the Institute of Management and Engineering, all these aspects together, and where we also incorporated design thinking into the curriculum of engineering as a mandatory course right from 2018. I mean, we have been working on it since 2016. We introduced that in 2018. And this holistic education, where students learn necessarily by design to be a part of open education, where they take open electives, where they have to mandatorily team up with students from other branches in the class, and also complete projects that are multidisciplinary in nature, particularly design thinking. We also understand that there is gender diversity in the way we think. Men and women think differently, right? There is established research for that. And so our design thinking courses are multidisciplinary, gender diverse, team project-based courses, where students can actually take projects inspired by the Sustainable Development Goals that the United Nations has identified and take up problems, narrow them down to a context that they can work in and work. This kind of holistic approach, the way students can actually put themselves as a part of the research and innovation system, where we also have been having studentpreneurs right from 2016. We have a whole ecosystem on innovation, where we have a competency development center, the Institute Innovation Cell, the Industry Institute Partnership Cell, and also the Global Relationships Office, which also looks into the global innovations, the Research and Consultancy Center, and the in-house incubator, VJ Hub, which I manage. All these together give students a culture. I mean, they introduce the students to a culture where students can actually be a part of the culture itself, get inspired by their senior students who are already a part of it, and learn the ropes from them, and be different from their peers outside. With 15 lakhs engineers nearly graduating every year in India, it's important for each of us to actually look at innovation as an important component, a necessary component of education outcomes. And I'm glad that we are thinking in those lines, and I'm also glad that organizations, the networks like IndiGlobal Network actually give us such opportunities. And I really thank all of you for a patient hearing. And I'm glad I could be here representing Vignana Jyothi in the absence of our president, Mr. Daggubati Suresh Babu Garu. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chakravarthula, for that the initiative that's been taken up by VNR Dr. Ramanaidu Agricultural Institution.